Welcome to today's video. I'm Richard Chapo. I'm an internet lawyer in San Diego, California. So today we're talking about new privacy laws, September 2019 update. Why do an update now? Because the world of privacy in the United States is changing rather radically. And we're seeing some significant developments. For instance, today was the last day. Well, actually, Friday, this past Friday. Yes, Friday the 13th was the last day for the California legislature to amend the California Consumer Privacy Act, a revolutionary new privacy law. But before we get into that, let's just start with the nature of privacy. So we are entering a new world. If you run an online business, whether it's a monster social media site or a little blog, you need to understand that the world of privacy is changing. Historically, consumer privacy laws in the United States have been weak. And by that, I mean we don't even have a general national consumer privacy law, certainly as applies to the internet per se. We do have some consumer privacy laws that deal with specific subjects. So, for instance, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act addresses privacy issues related to kids online, but nothing of a general sort. And that's very rare in the first world. Well, all of that's starting to change now, and we can thank some of the more obvious candidates. Certainly, Facebook with the Cambridge Analytica scandal didn't help anyone on the business side, and some of Google's conduct, of course, has raised some eyebrows. But it's really a reflection more of the value of personal information these days, of data. Data is king. Some people have argued it's more valuable than gold. And data is being used in ways that we have never really even contemplated. You have everything from, devices that record your information, whether you don't know it. I mean, we saw Samsung TVs that they were recording the data that people were talking about while watching shows there for a while. We have, the Amazon Echo products, that line of products, and they record information as well. And in fact, some of those recordings have been used in criminal cases to go after people. And even in a more benign situation, we look at a company like Netflix. A lot of people have Netflix memberships. I do. And you look at the shows that come out, and it may seem a little odd. Some of them seem similar to other shows, or there seems to be a lot of shows perhaps in a certain niche. And the reason for that is Netflix isn't just, making shows or approving shows on a whim. They're looking at viewer data. So when you are a member and what you're watching, what's your thumbs upping, what's your thumbs downing, how long do you watch? Do you watch the whole series or only parts of it? Netflix is looking at all that, and they're collating that data. And if they see that a large number of people enjoy watching documentaries on otters, well, I can guarantee you there's going to be more documentaries on otters. There's probably going to be otter movies and otter TV shows, the Housewives of Otterville, something of that sort. People can't get enough of otters. Well, then Netflix is going to give them what they want. And you even see it in other areas. If you've watched Netflix original series, sometimes it's maddening because they seem to always be canceled after the second or the third year or season. And the reason for that is that Netflix is making determinations as to the return on investment for those series. So when you see a traditional TV series like Supernatural, for instance, I haven't watched it myself, but it's been on for 15 years. There's 15 seasons. And the value for a traditional TV channel in that case is that they're getting advertising through those 15 seasons. Well, Netflix is only getting paid up front. And so there's little incentive for them to, create shows that are going to have these very long seasons or series of seasons. And so you're seeing data used in all these different ways. It's just everywhere. It can be, if you're running a website or an app, I'm sure you have Google Analytics or some similar service. You may have Google Console or whatever they're calling it now. And you're looking at your data. What pages on your website do people go to? What pages do people not go to? Where do they leave quickly? Where do they stay? All these different things that you're going to use to try to improve your website, improve the profitability of it. So data has changed the world. And privacy law, particularly in the United States, didn't really update with that change, but now it is. And so what we're seeing is nearly every state is passing a data law of one sort or another. And it may just deal with data breaches, so a situation where people are getting hacked, or it may involve something more like actual privacy laws that give consumers rights, that place obligations on businesses in relation to how they use consumer data. and so on and so forth. And the two states are probably the leading contenders in this area are Nevada. Nevada has amended its privacy law and has changes going into effect on October 1st that essentially are going to give consumers the right to stop the sale of their personal information. So if you're collecting personal information from consumers in Nevada and you're selling it to other parties for monetary consideration, well, those consumers are going to have the right to tell you to stop, and you better stop, or you could be subject of a attorney general investigation. The CCPA, or California Consumer Privacy Act, goes into effect on January 1st, 2020, and it is much more comprehensive. It is a major step forward for consumer rights and places all kinds of burdens and obligations on businesses that are collecting personal information, and that's true if you're online or off. And it's just kind of a radical rethinking of privacy law. Unfortunately, the law itself is a bit of a muddled mess. It was created as an initiative and rushed into law. So it wasn't, the origins aren't as clean as they usually are, and it's caused a lot of problems. Basically, the people who created it and sponsored it were not politicians. They were people who were fans of the GDPR in Europe. Now you'll hear the CCPA referred to as the GDPR. It's not the GDPR. It's not nearly as onerous or burdensome, but it's still radical rethinking. So consumers are going to have the right to do things like ask you as a business what information you have about them, and ask that you produce that actual information. They're going to be able to tell you, I want certain parts deleted. They're going to be able to tell you, I don't want you to sell my information. Now, the interesting thing on the CCPA is, all that may sound fairly straightforward until you get to the definitions of the CCPA. And so personal information is defined not as just somebody's name, email address, and maybe street address and phone number, but includes things like their IP address, biometric data, facial recognition, basically anything that can be used to directly or indirectly identify that person. If that sounds incredibly broad, it is. And then the definition of the word sale or sell doesn't just mean a transaction for money. It means a transaction for compensation or valuable consideration. What is valuable consideration? Well, it's anything of value is coming the other way. And so there are going to be a lot of questions about how this law actually functions in the real world. But it is a radical change from what you're used to. The days of, getting a privacy policy and quote unquote borrowing it from another website, or paying $29 or something to get it off of a form site, those days are over. They just are. The issue with privacy law compliance now is not slapping the privacy policy up on your site. You need a whole bunch of procedures and techniques and methods that you can use behind the scenes to actually comply with the privacy requirements. So if somebody makes a request for you to delete their personal information, well, you need to be able to find that information, delete it. You need to be able to tell your vendors who have access to that information to delete it. So if you're using, certain vendors, maybe, I don't know, somebody to facilitate your email list or something of that sort, you're going to have to be able to do that. So it's a whole new world. Now, you might be thinking, this is insane. I'm going to have different privacy laws I'm going to have to deal with for every state. That's going to be incredibly expensive and burdensome. How can I possibly meet all of those compliance requirements? And that is an extremely valid interpretation. And you have my sympathy. The problem is the federal government is an utter failure in this country when it comes to privacy laws. It just is. There's not even a debate about it. We need a national privacy law. And the reason we need one is that privacy law will trump, no pun intended, these different state privacy laws. So even if the federal government passed a national privacy law that was bad for business, it would still be better than where we are now, because we would have one set of rules. And we could say, okay, here are all these rules. They may be a pain in the rear end, but this is exactly what you have to do to comply. And you could go ahead and comply with those. And under a concept called the Supremacy Clause, the state laws would essentially become null and void. Now, there might be some wiggle room around the edges of each law, but generally speaking, the federal privacy law is what you'd want to focus on. And if we had one set of rules, even if they were a royal pain in the rear, at least we would have one set of rules instead of 45 or 50 or whatever, depending on how many states actually enact their laws. And that would be ideal. Unfortunately, we don't have that. There have been a couple bills introduced that look to me to be dead on arrival. And I imagine we're not going to have anything until after the next federal election, because, as we all know, whether you're conservative or liberal, the political parties they seem to be more interested in scoring points these days than they do in actually getting things done. And this is particularly true when we're leading up to an election. We're going to have a presidential election and a election for the House and the Senate, and so the chances of the Democrats and the Republicans working together to enact one of these laws, and this what would have to happen. Well, I probably don't have to tell you that chance is pretty small. Now, after the presidential election, should we see a privacy law? You would think so. You would hope so, because we desperately need one. And the irony here is that when we talk about privacy law, there are typically two opposing groups. One is big tech, business. They want obviously privacy laws that maybe are a little more lenient than you see, when it comes to the interest of individuals. And then on the other side, we have privacy advocates, people like Alistair McTaggart, who sponsored the CCPA, and they view business as evil, and they want very strong privacy laws. The irony in this situation is we have both groups, in many cases, are actually advocating for national privacy law. Even a lot of the privacy advocates for consumers realize that if you have 50 different sets of laws, it just causes complete chaos. We need one set of law, just like Europe has a GDPR. As much as personally I despise the GDPR, at least it's one set of requirements. And if we could get that in the United States, it would make a lot of difference, because you would have to comply with it once, learn it once, and that is that. You wouldn't have to worry about, some strange privacy law in Wyoming being passed and implicating you when you're running a business from another state. So eventually we should see a national privacy law, and it will be wonderful. It will simplify things a good bit. But until then, you're going to have to do everything you can to comply with the various privacy laws that are out there. So perhaps the bigger idea here is that, you need a new mindset. If you're operating online, the days of just slapping up a cheesy privacy policy, well, those are over. It's just done and dusted. Now you're going to need to be able to interact with your visitors. They're going to be able to make different requests for you for different things, and you're going to need to be able to respond to those requests and produce whatever documentation is necessary, or responses to their questions. And so preparing yourself and developing that new mindset is half the battle, because you have to realize that the things that worked in the past, they're no longer going to work. So that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving me a thumbs up. If not, I feel shame. Thumbs down. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to have more videos on the various privacy laws that are coming out and the implications. If you go over to our website, to our homepage on YouTube, you can see a playlist for the California Consumer Privacy Act, where you might be able to find answers to any questions you have. And if you need help with the CCPA or privacy law compliance, feel free to contact me at SoCalInternetLawyer.com. Or you can look me up online, Richard Chapo, Chapo. And yes, Chapo, the same name as the drug king from Mexico. And no, we're not related. So anyways, thanks for watching. Have yourself a good one.